Honestly, the step from B2 First to C1 Advanced isn't really about the grammar. Learning a language is a lot more than just isolating different parts of the grammar and trying to learn them, so please don't forget that. And to be honest, the C1 Advanced exam is more about showing greater control over the structures that you learned at the B2 First level anyway. While a B2 First level student may have to think about whether they need a second, third, or mixed conditional, for a C1 Advanced student it should just appear. This is what we call automaticity, and it is how you can just do something without even thinking about doing it. You kind of just do it, like riding a bike. You don't think about what you're doing, you just do it. However, having said all of that, there are some things that do appear at the C1 Advanced level that you're unlikely to find in a B2 First coursebook. So, let's have a look at them. You will see a pattern here, because inversion does appear in B2 coursebooks. In fact, inversion occurs in A1 coursebooks, like when we ask a question, for example. So, yeah. However, at the C1 Advanced level, you should know a greater variety of forms that require inversion. These include no sooner, hardly, barely, not until. Yeah, these are all negative adverbials. And because I'm a great guy, I'll give you some examples with the inversion highlighted. No sooner had he arrived at the exam room than he realized he had forgotten his pen. Barely had he arrived at the exam room when he realized he had forgotten his pen. Hardly had he arrived at the exam room when he realized he had forgotten his pen. Not until he arrived at the exam room did he realize that he had forgotten his pen. At the C1 Advanced level, you will also be introduced to inverting your conditionals. Things like replacing if with should in a first conditional, or saying were I to instead of if plus the past simple in a second conditional. We also do something similar with the third conditional. Instead of saying if I had gone, we can say had I gone, which actually, now I think about it, is a lot easier, isn't it? Don't have to say if, so that's nice. And of course, if you're watching this thinking, Toby, that sounds really interesting and I would love to learn how to invert some beautiful conditionals, then I have a video all about how to do it up there. At the B2 First level, there is the subjunctive. Of course there is, but it's restricted. It's restricted to structures like I wish and if only, and the first clause of a second conditional. At the C1 Advanced level, you should be familiar with the use of the subjunctive with expressions like I would rather and I would prefer, and you will need to know how to use expressions such as it's time and it's high time. Oh, and you should probably be familiar with how the subjunctive can work with reporting verbs. For example, he requested that I be seated, or I ask that he sit next to her. You'll notice that the verb after the subject doesn't change. It's the infinitive. It's always the bare infinitive, and that's really weird and confusing, but you should be familiar with that at the C1 level. I have a video explaining all about the subjunctive right here, because of course I do. At the C1 Advanced level, you should be familiar with present participle clauses like this. Oh my god, I've got a great example. Being one of the most desirable personalities on YouTube, Monica is often recognized in the street. Really? Are you? Yeah, Toby, of course I am. It happens all the time. Yeah, by your mum. Yep, hilarious. Woohoo! And you also need to know how to use past participle clauses. Like this. Shocked by the rise of Smash English, Duke started his own YouTube channel. Okay, and what will it be called? Dutch with Dirty Duke. What? Oh my god, Duke, you speak Dutch? No. And you should also know how to use perfect participle clauses. Like this. Having been running Smash English for 3 years, Toby is starting to look older. Yeah, and he's put on weight. Oh my god, have you seen his belly recently? It's huge. Okay, this is a strange one, but I've never seen it in a B2 First coursebook before, but I have seen it in C1 Advanced coursebooks, so I thought I'd put it in the video. As you should know, we can change the verb be in the passive with get. For example, I got fired, or he got slapped. I don't know. Well, you can add a reflexive pronoun between get and the past participle. So, I got myself fired, or he got himself slapped. This suggests that the person that received the action is in some way responsible for it. If I got myself fired, then I was probably behaving terribly. If he got himself slapped, then he was probably behaving terribly. But violence is never the answer. Okay, guys, don't slap people. It's not very nice. So, in everyday English, we place prepositions at the end of defining relative clauses, right? For example, Smash English, that is the YouTube channel I subscribed to. However, in more formal English, we can place the preposition before the relative pronoun. You're probably kind of familiar with doing this at the B2 First level. It's quite common for students to say in which instead of where, and that's basically what you're doing here. For example,
yes, that is the bedroom in which she sleeps.
Yeah, but you can also do something like this. Smash English, that is the YouTube channel to which I subscribed. So yeah, in defining relative clauses that require a preposition, put the preposition before the relative pronoun instead of at the end of the relative clause. Yes? Yes. And there we have it. Those were 5 grammar structures that you're not going to find at the B2 First level, but you need to know for C1 Advanced. If you liked the video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment down below. My name is Toby, and this was Smash English.